a little bit what is going to be the financial structure that we can put in place, taking into account the amount of money that is required for this. And keeping in mind that it is going to be a public and a private involvement required to make sure that we have a quantum leapfrog in the usage and adoption of AI across the different sectors. Eventually, you know, when we were precisely thinking about the strategy of digital transformation within the Asian Development Bank, we were precisely thinking about different layers. We were thinking about a layer associated to the fundamentals, where we are thinking about the digital and the data infrastructure, but also we were considering how cybersecurity, how critical infrastructure and information protection needs to be brought into the discussion. And just in those two specific activities related to the first layer, there is a financial decision that we need to consider. The second layer is precisely related to the accelerators, and we are these days in India, which is one of the leading countries in terms of DPI. So I guess that the combination of AI and DPI is also something that it may be worthy to discuss to make sure that we can incorporate this into the curriculum. And last but not least is precisely the use cases. So from early warning systems to cadastre to how to make sure that we are taking advantage of the digitalization of energy, transport, social services. At the end of the day, AI needs to be considered, because as I said at the very beginning, you know, the computing power, but also the algorithm is going to define the productivity and the level of So let me just conclude these opening remarks, welcoming you to this particular session that I understand is going to be very dynamic with different colleagues from the bank, but also representatives from the government that are going to precisely present concrete use cases, taking into account the role that the ADB is playing as a strategic partner in supporting government decisions to move forward. Thank you very much all, and over to you.
Thank you, Antonio. Next up is someone who will talk about what Antonio just mentioned in terms of what the government should be thinking about, building these shared foundations and different approaches of PPP, or whether government provides for compute or government acts as a regulator and facilitator. So, well, we're on here and seeing the IndiaAI Summit, but there is also an IndiaAI mission which has done the hard work of setting up the IndiaAI strategy and policies, as well as provisioning of compute, etc. So I call upon Kushal to explain what the IndiaAI mission is.
Thanks, Ritul. I think before I begin, I want to express our gratitude on behalf of Government of India to the Asian Development Bank for curating this session today, and to all the dignitaries present here. As Ritul said, my presentation today is going to focus on how India went about building AI-ready digital foundations. When we started just a little less than 2 years ago, we had about 10,000 crores, which is $1.2 billion, to start our national program on artificial intelligence. And the idea was, in a country that is as large as ours, how do we take this amount of financing and ensure that we are able to democratize both access to artificial intelligence as well as its benefits. So how do we ensure that every innovator in the country has an opportunity to create a competitive AI solution, as well as every citizen to be able to benefit from that said AI solution. So before we get into AI-ready digital foundations, of course, a lot of you here already would know that India started its digital public infrastructure journey much before. It's been more than 10 years since we've been trying to build digital public infrastructure in India. And now that it has been some time since the Digital India Corporation has been functioning with this mission, we are able to see that digital public infrastructure, there is enough evidence to indicate that it helps transform public service delivery systems and ensure access to services for citizens. We typically look at foundational digital public infrastructure as data, payments, and identity, essentially elements that allow in an economy for individuals and entities to transact digitally. So you need an identity proof for that, a digital identity proof for that. You need a payment system that is robust, and you need flow of information to be streamlined. Therefore, the data empowerment element. And over here we have, of course, these numbers in terms of scale that India's digital public infrastructure ecosystem has reached. We have, I think, the most robust and largest payment system, both in terms of monthly transaction value as well as overall value of payments. That includes about 21.7 billion monthly transactions and 290 billion in terms of value of payments monthly. There is an application called DigiLocker. It is essentially India's digital locker system for verified credentials and documents. Today, it has about 660 million users and is issuing about 9.5 billion documents. And these are all verified. So it eventually plugs into public service delivery systems. So, for example, if you're to verify a driving license copy, a digital copy of a driving license in India, we have that system through DigiLocker as an application. And of course, much has been said about Aadhaar as well, which is India's digital identity system. In terms of its coverage today, it covers more than 99.5% of our population. And again, it's being plugged into public service delivery from an authentication point of view to enable direct benefits transfer, which is leading to about 42 billion in savings as we speak today. So there has been a long journey for a developing country like India in terms of first building its basic digital public infrastructure. And from there, why it is important to look beyond and focus on artificial intelligence, particularly for the global south and developing countries, is because AI and emerging technologies are redefining work and productivity. We are already seeing a lot of change in terms of future of work, in terms of what a typical workforce readiness looks like, and all of this disproportionately impacts the global south. There is also potential in terms of enhancing governance in public service delivery, and we feel that if we are able to integrate digital public infrastructure and artificial intelligence, this can allow developing countries to leapfrog traditional development challenges and traditional development cycles. Key drivers of AI innovation, so just like we saw that in terms of the overall digital ecosystem, you need identity, payments, and systems. In terms of the AI innovation ecosystem, that translates to having access and affordability to AI compute, data sets, models, and talent. And recognizing this, we designed the national program on AI, or the IndiaAI mission, when we were looking at building the AI innovation ecosystem in the country. And access to these resources is not just critical from a country perspective, but even globally to bridge the AI divide. It is important that we work domestically as well as internationally towards making sure that these resources are accessible and affordable to all. And around them, you do need to have basic enablers such as regulatory clarity, access to patient capital, and I think those are also some things that we'll touch upon later in the panel discussion today. Coming to finally the IndiaAI mission, recognizing all of this, the IndiaAI mission, which is essentially a 5-year program with a budget outlay of about 1.2 billion, how that is structured is it has 7 pillars. Again, looking at building 7 basic AI-ready digital foundations. So the IndiaAI compute capacity is focusing on ensuring that there is access to AI compute. The foundation models pillar is looking at building indigenous foundation models which are contextualized to our social, linguistic, cultural diversity, and is ensuring that AI applications are as effective in India as they would be in a predominantly English-speaking population. The AI Kosh is the access layer of the entire mission. Kosh essentially means repository, and it is a repository of data sets, models, and now we put a development layer on top as well by providing it access to the compute pillar. So as an innovator, you can come onto this platform. It is a lot similar to Hugging Face, where you have everything that you need to build a model right there and there, from the development environment to the tools and libraries to the models and data sets in the compute required. The application development initiative is where we are focusing on the end use, where we are actually focusing on ensuring that all of this is used for AI for good solutions. We followed a very diverse model here in terms of what the role of the state should be when it comes to innovation. We've tried to ensure that across the India mission, we are more focusing on the foundational pillars and not going too much into the use case side, which is where the private sector is supposed to innovate. Where we do come in is there are a lot of challenges which may not have immediate commercial viability. So we source problem statements from various ministries and agencies within Government of India, where they think that AI can act as a disruptor, but there is not immediate commercial viability. And then those problem statements are thrown to the AI innovation ecosystem in India through hackathons, innovation challenges, uh, and we are looking at sourcing solutions from there. So good example of this would be we have a lot of cases emerging of cybercrime in India, and uh, there is one digital database that we maintain, the National Cybercrime Database, which is very sensitive, and it is not easy to provide access to innovators to that database to be able to look at AI-based interventions there. So we created a synthetic dummy version of that database, opened a hackathon that was open to all innovators in the country, moved from one stage to a stage where we could shortlist 20 innovators, get them on premise within a secured environment, and get them to innovate on something that looks a lot closer to the actual database. And today, the Ministry of Home Affairs in India is looking at potentially utilizing that solution. The future skills pillar is focusing on essentially ensuring that the next wave of workforce in India is AI ready. Here again, what we are doing largely is how do we ensure that the jobs which are supposed to be, which are presumed to be disrupted first, which is technical jobs in terms of your plumbers, mechanics, etc. They're all trained in India in industrial training institutions. There are technical education infrastructure. So how can we go into tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India and transform these technical education infrastructure institutions and set up data and AI labs there? So that is something that we're doing there. Safe and Trusted AI pillar is looking at India's technology-enabled approach to governance. It is essentially looking at creating tools, benchmarks, and using the technology in itself to govern AI. Most important to ensure that we are not looking at governance of AI in a way that puts a disproportionate burden on our already stressed bureaucracy. So how do we have technical interventions there as well to streamline governance? And the startup financing pillar is providing patient capital again to AI startups where there may not be immediate commercial viability. How all of this looks like in terms of ensuring development of AI for citizens is that you start with curating these data sets which would be most relevant for AI for good solutions, so health data sets, weather data sets, etc. That is what the AI coach pillar is doing. Then you have your models work on top of that, which are again indigenous and contextualized. That is what the foundation models pillar is doing. And then finally, you use that and the compute to build these solutions. My last slide, as I said in the beginning, it's been just a little less than 2 years. And the IndiaAI mission has been able to do all of its targets with, I think, I've not had the time to go through this. It would be about 1/10 of the amount that we had envisaged. For example, we had thought that we use the compute pillar to provide access to 10,000 GPUs when this mission had gone live. At that time, India's most prominent AI compute infrastructure was about 438 GPUs. And we're talking just about one and a half, 2 years back. Uh, in this short span of time, we've gone from that 438 GPUs to about 38,000 GPUs. And it's not 38,000 GPUs that Government of India has procured all on its own money. It's through public-private partnership. It's through demand aggregation. It is through price discovery. It is through transparency. And that could be a separate session in itself in terms of how there could be various models to enable democratization of compute that does not sort of require building these monolith compute facilities all funded by the government in itself. So 38,000 GPUs, we have about 10,000 data sets, 250 models. There are 12 AI startup companies that are focusing on building indigenous foundation models. Across panels this week, you hear a lot about the work that they're doing. And we've set up 30 of those data and AI labs. We are planning to set up about 270. So yes, with that, looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kushal. It's great to hear what India has been doing and the progress of the mission. Now over to my colleague Carolyn to hear what is happening in the broader APAC region as to what our other DMC partners are doing.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ritul. And good morning. I think. Good morning. Oh, no, it is afternoon. The day is flying by. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolyn Flory. I'm a digital development specialist with the Asian Development Bank. I'm very excited for this panel today, and I think that we've had the best introduction that we can to the foundations building AI-ready infrastructure. And so we've heard from one country's perspective, which is incredibly impressive, and really we're going to take a bit of a step back. So we've heard from one, and now we're going to look at some of the aspects of building the digital foundations, and really looking at it from three maybe tension points. So one around readiness. What does that mean and what does it take? The second around financing, and then the third we'll be looking at coordination. And so I have a series of questions for my colleagues on the stage. Hopefully we'll have time for some questions from the audience, but we'll see how I do with time management. So I'll ask my colleagues, when I ask a question, if you could also introduce yourselves to the audience as well. So Mayank, I'm actually going to start with you. So first, you know, we've heard one perspective, and we recognize that there are massive investments happening in the West. And so from your perspective, as someone that focuses on private sector development at the Asian Development Bank, what does it really take to make a country's digital foundations AI ready? Where do you see some of the biggest gaps and opportunities in Asia Pacific? Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mayank Chaudhary. I'm Director for Infrastructure Financing for the private sector for South Central and West Asia. I'll start. So first of all, a bit of more of an introduction. I'm an infrastructure financing professional. I'm not a technology financing professional. So, but it's important for us to understand what is happening in this AI space is a lot to do with enabling infrastructure. So when we talk about infrastructure in our developing member countries, we also talk about the role governments play, the regulatory environment, the risk allocation on a public-private partnership basis, the ability to structure contractual arrangements with the private sector in a fair and transparent manner. And so when we come to the specific question on AI readiness in mostly developing member countries, we have to look at from the country's perspective. Of course, they want the best-in-class infrastructure. They want the best available environment for their innovators and their young people to create new applications. But they also have to have resource constraint. Where do they spend this money on? Healthcare, education, providing roads, clean water, sewage treatment. So, so they have to prioritize, and to create this infrastructure, certain enabling environment is absolutely must, right? I mean, you have to have reliable power supply, you have to have water, you have to have availability of land to create these data centers, and then you start talking about data sets and compute capacity and models, right? So first, And that's what the role ADB plays. That's where we come in, right? We support these governments to put in place this enabling infrastructure. So we have been doing that by way of provision of, let's say, data capacity to the countries, supporting telecom networks expansion, data center creation. Now, going forward, I think there is a role for us to play in creating compute capacities. And maybe not every country needs to have its own compute capacity. You know, you can actually have regional cooperation amongst neighboring countries, and they can actually come together and create a compute capacity. This also allows them to, you know, have a bargaining power in terms of access to chips and other infrastructure enablers. So that is the opportunity for us. You know, we need to come together. We need to create this situation where you can actually create this compute capacity infrastructure. In terms of gaps, I would say that most countries have actually not caught up with the pace at which this this whole situation is unfolding. Between last year and now, so many changes have happened. So I think the first thing to do is to recognize that they need to step up alongside the changes, you know, so that then create an enabling environment, regulatory framework for this to happen, and then of course ADB will play a central role in helping all of the governments come together. I'm happy to elaborate, but I think we'll run out of time, so I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Yes, definitely a topic that we can talk about for hours on hours. So, but we'll come back to you. I think that's a great segue, and I'm going to turn to Firuz, our colleague from Tajikistan. Really excited to hear about your country experience, and also, you know, we've heard about the enabling environment from Mayak, and also the trade-offs that countries have to make when you're thinking about digital foundations and also being AI ready. As we see, we're moving in this direction. The train has left the station. So for you, what does that look like in terms of competing digital infrastructure investments, and how do you prioritize basic digital foundations with more advanced AI investments?
Thank you, Caroline. Hi everyone, my name is Firuz John. I'm representing Tajikistan. I serve as a deputy chair at AI Council under the Ministry of Industry and New Technologies. So Tajikistan has a very unique case. Basically, when we started AI back in 2020s, AI wasn't a big hype. So when we started, when we published an article that Tajikistan is going to lead AI initiatives, we had so many doubting comments under the article saying that how come you are going to practice AI when no one in the world is thinking about it yet. But what was our pitch? Tajikistan is very small. 93% of the country is in mountains. So in terms of delivering tangible products, we are not the best because it takes time, it takes years to be drawn somewhere, and we don't have access to the sea. So when we saw AI, our pitch to the government was that, like, this is the way we are going to leapfrog our economy, and this is the way how we're gonna foster our development. Why? Because the usual developing country, when it develops its industry in terms of production, it goes to the middle track where you cannot grow. But AI creates a great opportunity. So what we have started, basically small academy, like we had the first cohort of 50 students. We got them, we sent them to the banks. After 2 months they come back, sorry, you are doing a great job, we are not practicing anything you taught us. Then we thought about the startups. Why we can't make own startups so they can make products. So after 3 years now, so we have started the small use cases of academy, like credit scoring in finance. Now we have like around 10 companies, some small, some big, but we are exporting products to like 25 countries, AI products, out of Tajikistan. Most of the technical teams, surprisingly from many of our partners, also from Tajikistan. Now, so it's creating a big puzzle for us. So once we started AI, there wasn't anything about AI compute data center. Now it's becoming like a major agenda. And you know what, we have another part of the puzzle. Tajikistan is rich in hydropower, green energy, we have solar potential, and we are building the biggest dam in the world right now. So now, slowly, our puzzle is being created into one, where we have some talent, where we have companies, and where we have demand for the AI data centers. And in terms of making steps from small use cases to the bigger one, I think we have a really good example. And as my colleague said, like, even though we have a great potential in building several data centers, we cannot handle all of it because there is not enough offtake just from Tajikistan for all those data centers, and where this concept of partnership in Central Asia comes. Like one case, I guess, for Central Asia partnership, Central Asian countries were able to proceed with one of the very rare UN resolutions, where it fosters partnerships for better partnership in Central Asia, and gives a specific case of developing countries where they can partner with each other, both in talent development, both in AI infrastructure. It was passed by all the countries within the UN. So now we are in a stage where we have passed like foundation, which is important. Now we need to scale really big, and we have like that ambitions, and we have that resources to do. I think over to you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And great to hear perspective and how you're making that case in Tajikistan. I'm going to, sorry for shifting back and forth, I'm going to turn to Azizjan Akramov from Uzbekistan and also get a Ministry of Finance perspective. Similar type of question, really looking at again, going to the trade-offs and how you're making that case internally. How do you, as you're thinking about justifying long-term AI infrastructure investments when fiscal space is constrained, when there are trade-offs? And what are some of the long-term projects that you're also focusing on in Uzbekistan?
Thank you very much, Caroline. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tony. I'm representing Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy and Finance from Uzbekistan. This is John Akramov. So I will give my views from a little bit different angle because I'm also not a technical specialist in AI, but most years of my work experience have been in banking and finance sphere. So I would say at first one thing, finance is always tight. You know, from perspective of Ministry of Finance, it is always tight. But if we want to develop the economy and we would like to move forward, we must justify. And I think there is no need to justify now because the world, the time has already shown the importance of modernization, digitalization, and AI, and so on. So even when fiscal space is tight, investments in AI-ready digital infrastructure must be viewed as long-term economic and productivity investments. It must be viewed because first, these investments improve fiscal outcomes. How? Better tax compliance, reduce fraud, and more efficient public expenditure. So we can take a view from that side, public expenditure, because this is one of the most part of the question. We can earn a lot of money, but if we do not control the expenditure side, our efforts are very not successful, let's say. Secondly, they strengthen economic competitiveness by enabling innovation, digital services, and private sector growth. As my counterpart, Firuzjan, explained, so we are both Central Asian countries, and Uzbekistan is one of the two double landlocked countries in the world. In order to have access to the sea, either we should go through Afghanistan, then Pakistan, then either through Afghanistan, then Iran, Turkmenistan. So a lot of questions there. So Uzbekistan is one of the two double landlocked countries in the world. And we need to take right directions for our growth, for regional growth as well, for Central Asia. So, in this case, regional cooperation is very important for us, and we have got very similar situations in many cases. And third, delaying foundational digital infrastructure typically costs more later. As I mentioned a little bit before, if we do not start right now, we will have to pay more, even not much later, even after a year. Because life is changing so fast today. That's why in Uzbekistan, our long-term priorities focus on building shared digital foundations, secure government cloud infrastructure, trusted data exchange systems, digital public infrastructure, such as digital identity and resilient connectivity. So specifically, I can count with the permission some of let's say one of our long-term projects as our government now doing. Saudi company Data Vault is implementing a project to build a 12 megawatt data center on the premises of IT Park Uzbekistan and in Tashkent. It is in Tashkent, in the capital city. The project now it is valued 150 million US dollars. It is scheduled to completion by the end of this year, 2026. This new facility will become the first data center in Central Asia based on artificial intelligence technologies. It will receive the LEED Gold certification, confirming its compliance with international green standards. And of course, we hope it will strengthen Uzbekistan's position as a regional data hub. The center will have direct global technology giants such as Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon, and others. So, by the way, I would like to just mention quickly that we have, in Uzbekistan, we have initiated the development of a strategy for semiconductors and electronics development towards this industry. Because this is one of the crucial points for the development of any country, but not every country has the capacities to enter the global value chain of this sphere. We have started this way, and on the beginning of this way, I would really would like to emphasize Asian Development Bank's help on our first stage. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we can talk long, on this topic. I think I will pass. We'll be ready to any questions.
Thank you so much. And it's been a real pleasure to partner in Uzbekistan on the semiconductor strategy, the IT park, with the Digital Sector Office at the ADB. So, last but not least, of course, so we've heard a lot about the readiness. And so I'm turning it over to Aidana to hear a little bit more about the implementations that are happening in Kazakhstan. And so really excited, and unfortunately haven't had the chance to visit quite yet, although I think that's probably a good thing since it's so cold right now. But really excited to hear about how you're thinking about moving from some of the pilots, where there's a lot of experimentation with artificial intelligence now, and how you're really moving from AI pilots to AI integration into public services. And what have been some of the most decisive changes in the digital foundations or coordination that have allowed you to shift from testing out these prototypes to actually convincing key ministries to back those changes, to support them? So, Aidana, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. Is it working? This is a very important question because, as you may know, many countries they have the AI pilots. But few of them just manage to have the AI in a large scale. From Kazakhstan's experience, the shift did not happen just in one specific technology. It happened when the digital foundations of the government were strong enough so that AI can be embedded in the digital government. So in that sense, becoming AI ready is really about the long-term investment in the system and not only investment in the AI itself. So I would like to highlight 3 main changes that made a really big difference in our country, in Kazakhstan. First is the data should be usable across the institutions. AI cannot work effectively in fragmented information or if the information is isolated in a separate system. And one of the most important shifts for us, for Kazakhstan, was building structured and governed data exchange. Second, digital government infrastructure had to become functioning as a national infrastructure. Just imagine, if each ministry will be building their own digital system independently, separately, it will be a mess. And to scale the new technology, including AI, it will be very difficult and very slow. So in Kazakhstan, core digital systems such as identity, integration layers, service platforms are shared across the institutions and government agencies. And that creates a stable environment for AI to be embedded into existing platforms and to be developed further. Third one, and this is the hardest one, I would say, is the institutional coordination. As you know, AI deployment have many actors, including the regulators, IT operators, service agencies, and data owners. And progress happens when they operate within the shared standards and the government's arrangements. And it really makes the impact in the real workforce. And the responsibilities should be clear in each level of the organization. And this way, the main structural changes in our country. For example, we are introducing AI in our citizen service platform, e-appeal system. It's called e-witness, we call it. It's where the large volumes of the public requests need to be processed and analyzed correctly. And because services already operate digitally at scale and the data flows across the institution, AI can help classify incoming requests, support the routing, and manage the processing efficiently and transparently so that the citizen get the help from the government instantly. So what matters here is not the specific tool, it is the environment that allows AI to be developed. And in terms of convincing key ministries, the turning point was the demonstration of the actual operational value. When they saw the real impact, the improvements, faster processing, the less manual workload, and so on. Support just comes naturally. And currently, our interaction is just like became, what to say, like we just get used to it. So in Kazakhstan, we are now seeing that transition, and we are learning is that many countries are facing a similar moment, and where the main challenge is not the experimentation of AI itself, but the integration. And that is where shared learning and practical cooperation becomes really important.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And it's amazing to see the journey that Kazakhstan has gone through, and really that integration working across a number of ministries. So hopefully we'll get a chance to dig into that a little bit more. So we've had a series of questions around readiness. So now we've explored the trade-offs. We know the difficult decisions that, that governments have to make. Mike, I'm going to turn back to you to take us into the financing side of things. So would love for you to, if you can speak to what financing models or instruments are you seeing that are most promising for AI infrastructure? And how do you think development finance and private capital can work together in this space as well?
That's a key question, right? I mean, that's where our expertise comes in. You have various models, right? I mean, you have a model of DPI in India where government funded the entire infrastructure and that's available for free to the users. The other extreme is you have these large technology companies investing in proprietary infrastructure which they do not share and they keep it themselves, right? So we are somewhere in the middle. In our developing member countries, of course, governments do not have that kind of budget to do it all themselves. they also don't have these technology giants who would be investing in their countries. So we have to find PPP models which can actually work. Now, for a PPP model to work, the private sector has to come in a very clearly defined role. Private sector creates that capacity. Private sector does not take regulatory risk. Private sector does not take the initial development risk. So governments and MDBs like us have to create that enabling environment, the initial infrastructure pre-development work, and bring in private sector. Now that's just not enough. Because this sector is actually evolving very rapidly, it is very difficult for the private sector to actually anticipate what kind of demand and what kind of user charges will be there. So unless that is fixed, it is very difficult to then justify a return on the investment which one is making. So the governments again have to step in. They have to basically guarantee demand, at affordable price. And it has been our experience. I will draw a parallel to a healthcare scheme which we did in India, where we supported a company which is putting dialysis machines in hospitals on a PPP basis. The company doesn't know how many people will come for the dialysis, and it's a very high capital intensive business. And to keep the user charges low so that more and more poorer or lower middle class people can come, you need assured demand. So the government has come up with a PPP model where they assure a minimum demand at that price. And then the private sector can go in and make that investment, knowing fully well that certain level of demand is assured. And believe me, the government guarantee was never called because demand was always more than the capacity. But that the safety net for the private sector to make the initial investment is important. So I think that same parallel can be drawn in creation of this GPU capacity or the data center capacity is for the government to come in and assure a certain level of demand at a very nominal user charges, and to make that happen, for us as multilateral banks, we are happy to support with also because considering the fiscal space, concession financing, on a long-term debt which is generally not available in the market, and the private sector can bring in the equity investment. So I think in a combination of this, actually a robust model can be created which will create this capacity. And also from our ADB's perspective, we can bring in several countries and create like a centralized infrastructure for several countries to share on an honest and transparent manner.
Thank you so much, Frank. I'm actually going to turn back to Aziz Jan on the government side of the flip side of that. I am going to note, those at the back you cannot see, there's a very ominous countdown timer here at the front telling us how much time is left. So I'll ask my colleagues to keep our interventions really tight and really specific. So Aziz Jan, from your perspective, what are those financing needs, investment PPPs, demand generation, blended finance, sovereign funds? What do you think, from your perspective, are most realistic for AI-ready infrastructure in a country like Uzbekistan?
For countries like Uzbekistan, let's say in emerging markets, I think the most realistic approach is blended finance, blended model. So public investments for sovereign and security critical layers combined with PPPs and development finance to scale data centers, cloud capacity and connectivity. And the project I mentioned, Data Vault, is the great example of it. So this is the main idea. Our ministry is holding and working on that right now, and approaching to the government as a strategy as well. So we are trying to avoid just hyping some kind of AI projects, but coming more and more realistic while understanding the importance of AI projects and the importance of implementing them today, not delaying just because of finance. So that's why we are trying to find different models, different funds, attract different investments, and mostly more realistic is blended model, which will best suit emerging markets like ours.
Thank you so much. Really exciting to also hear, from the financing perspective and the readiness perspective, there's been a real emphasis on regional collaboration as well, and so really great to see both on the infrastructure, the readiness, and the financing side, some of the partnerships there. So we've heard about readiness, and we've had a few questions on the financing side of things. And now I also want to turn to a bit more practical on the coordination and implementation. So first I'll turn to Firuzjan on from his experience in Tajikistan. Given I know that you wear a number of hats in the country, working with IndiaAI and the AI Council as well. And just from your perspective, what are some of the institutional coordination challenges when there are multiple ministries involved and we have to include a lot of different actors in AI and digital infrastructure?
Yeah, so that's a good question and good challenge, especially for the authority that implementing and deploying AI on the ground. So first of all, the first reaction which we got while we created the product, for many people, especially in the different authorities, the AI looked like a black box. They didn't understand it, how it works. And secondly, when you have an influence on making decision on something, you don't want to lose it. So when you deploy AI models, of course, you are going to lose it, and you cannot make decision as you did before. So that's why it's always a challenge, and whenever you go to any ministry or any agency, you need to explain why. So in our case, what was a big success is basically AI became a top agenda on the head of state level. So on his annual address, on daily meetings, the president of Tajikistan, Rahman, has mentioned that digitalization, AI, this is our way. So you want it or not, as a CEO of a state company or for head of department, you have a KPI of implementing AI in any processes. So let's say in the Ministry of Industry and New Technologies, one of the success cases has been using AI in providing licenses for SMEs. Before, it used to be like a very long process, and several people were part of committee. And you, as an entrepreneur, you need to wait for the decision for your review. While with AI, you just upload all your documents and you get instant decision whether you are going to the next phase or no. So that's why if you collaborate agenda on the high level of the government, and plus the readiness of the products by private sector for government sectors or any sectors, this can be a combination of success cases where your life as a deployer of AI would be easier. Otherwise, you have to back with each person explaining why AI is great and why it is, most of all, explainable. It's not like a black box.
Thank you so much, Firuzjan. Great to hear. Again, I think looking at the KPIs as well and making sure that AI is integrated, really interesting way to make sure that it is, just part of the everyday conversation and they're really integrated into government services. So, Donna, I'll turn to you for our final question. And this is going a bit more into the implementation again, and you've already mentioned some of the work that Kazakhstan's been doing on data exchange. But I'm wondering if you can go a little bit deeper into, data platforms as one specific example of practical design choices that you saw made a real difference in servicing and transformation. And what do you think that these are transferable to other countries as well?
Thank you. That's also a really good question. In Kazakhstan, the real digital service transformation began when digital systems stopped operating in isolation and started to work in a shared, connected environment. So I would like to highlight the main thing that before going or diving into AI, each country should be developing the foundations of the digital public infrastructure. Because as you may know, without the data exchange sets in the country, you cannot build any AI agents or the platform itself. So the case in Kazakhstan, we, as I said before, the DPI is shared across the institution, and our agencies or ministries, they don't need to build something from scratch. They already have the data, they already have the technology itself. And the thing is, we need to embed the AI into the existing platform and the projects, so it can be evolved further. We also learned that connectivity alone doesn't give the doesn't change the outcomes. What change outcome is the clarity, clarity about who can access the data, what condition can be used, what kind of responsibility that person should have. And once this result became the stable and predictable enough, cooperation between the institutions became routine. And today the results are visible in our daily operations. In Kazakhstan we have different data exchange systems. For example, Smart Bridge is a national data exchange platform. Smart Data Document is our national data lake where all government agencies are sharing their data, so others can be easily be used. And we also have systems like e-appeal, e-witness, as I told before, where large volumes of the citizens' request is processed and analyzed efficiently and correctly. And these systems are used as a normal administration in Kazakhstan. And these are not just pilot initiatives, they are embedded in how public services are working. And answering your question, what is most transferable to other countries, it is not the specific platform and it's not the specific technology. It is the shift in how the system is organized from separate digital service to connected operating environment. First, you need to set up the environment, the system as like human body, human organism. And many governments are now facing that and working in this direction, from digitalization of the processes, of the services, to redesigning how the public sector works as a system. So Kazakhstan is undergoing this transition in practice, and we see the strong value in the DPI not only as a national foundation, but we see DPI also as a partnership with other countries. So we'll be very open and happy to work with countries and institutions so we can develop AI and DPI together.
Thank you so much, Adana. So I think the clock is now at 0, but thank you so much to all of our panelists for the great discussion. Really appreciate looking at the financing, implementation, readiness aspects of AI infrastructure. And thank you to all of you. Apologies that we didn't get a chance for Q&A, but I hope you'll catch our panelists after the session. Thank you.
Thank you.